Route 37 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. It's the PEL, the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. We're still 5 minutes out, so you can just sit back and relax while other participants are logging on, and we'll get started. Right, again, welcome to our virtual public meeting for the State Route 37 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. The PEL, Planning and Environmental Linkages, it's new to us, so we're going slow with it so everybody can come on board. We're about 2 or 3 minutes away from the start of the meeting. We're logging on, get comfortable. We'll be going over some of the basics of the Zoom functions in a few minutes. We're in about a minute. There's a lot that's been done and getting underway with the State Route 37 corridor. And tonight, our focus will be on getting your input on the long-term improvements that our PEL study, Planning and Environmental Linkages, you're gonna hear that a lot tonight, focuses on. We're looking forward to hearing from you. But before we get going tonight, we've got a tremendous multidisciplinary team that has been working on State Route 37. We've got great professionals from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the Transportation Authority of Marin, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Our friends over at the Napa Valley Transportation Authority are part of this team, the Solano Transportation, as well as us here at Caltrans. And what we'd all like to say at the beginning of this meeting is that our hearts go out to our colleagues at the VTA, the Santa Clara community, and the families who lost loved ones in today's tragic shooting in San Jose. And we'd like to conduct tonight's meeting in their honor. Now with that, we're at about starting time. So I'll kick it off. Greetings. I'm Bart Ney. I'm the office chief for Caltrans here in the Bay Area. And it's my honor to open this meeting tonight, where we'll be hearing some recorded presentations and some live updates regarding the future of this important regional connection, State Route 37. Now, we expect a wide range of participants tonight, folks. So whether this is your first State Route 37 meeting or you've been following the projects for a while, our goal tonight is the same: to update you on what's going on and to hear your future of the corridor. Now, before we get started though, a couple of housekeeping items about Zoom, and you may know Zoom even better than me, but just so that we're all starting in the same place, You can adjust your view options in the top right and set the view to how you like it right there with the view options. You can see these green circles give you an idea of what the screen should be looking like. The audio and video buttons are in the bottom left hand of the screen. However, will be muted throughout the duration of the presentation. And we ask that videos remain off during the presentation. That will preserve our bandwidth and keep things moving smoother. Now, participants, of course, we want to hear from you tonight, are highly encouraged to send questions through the chat function here. And when using the chat function, you'll want to send your comment to the Enter Question Comment Here co-host. Now, your message will only be seen, they'll only be visible to our moderator, and they will address the questions in a session of tonight's presentations. There's really two parts of this presentation tonight, the meeting tonight, a presentation at the beginning, and then a Q&A session at the end. If your connection is delayed or has poor quality, try closing other programs that might be using your internet. I know that everyone knows that one, but might as well say it up here at the beginning. If you can't connect to audio through your computer, here's a neat trick. Dial in using your phone and use the audio from your computer audio, and you'll be able to have both functionalities. We are looking tonight to make this an interactive engagement. So as part of this meeting, we'll be soliciting information from you through polls. So at various points in this presentation, you'll be prompted to respond to a poll that'll appear on your screen. All you have to do is select the appropriate response and then press submit. And your responses will be considered as part of the Pell, the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. So with that, we're ready to get started with some welcome messages and our team introductions. Now, the first one I'd like to introduce is California District 3 Senator Bill Dodd, who has provided a recorded message for our meeting tonight.
Hi, I'm Senator Bill Dodd. Thank you for coming tonight to learn about your state highway, and thank you to Caltrans for convening this meeting. We have 4 different counties, the Metropolitan Transportation, Caltrans, and several nonprofits involved in the future of Highway 37. Having that many interests involved is a sign of how important this corridor is to the entire region and the state. Our motto is one corridor, one team. Highway 37 is a beautiful and unique place that has many long-term challenges, but the solutions to those challenges can provide a model for the rest of the state and nation. We can't keep delaying the solutions because it's expensive or difficult to build. Those things only get harder the longer we wait. I ran for the legislature to fix problems like this and not leave them for my kids and grandkids to solve. We owe it to future generations to fix this now. Thank you.
All right, that's Senator Dodd. Now, also addressing us tonight via recording is the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, Therese McMillan.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us to help plan the future of Highway 37. I'm Therese McMillan, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Because it connects Solano County cities and some of the most comparatively affordable housing in the Bay Area, with jobs in Marin and Sonoma counties, is an essential piece of the Bay Area's transportation puzzle, particularly along the 10-mile stretch between Mare Island and Sears Point. Congestion, flooding, and rising sea levels, plus the need to protect and enhance the San Pablo Baylands, make Highway 37 especially challenging. So we at MTC are glad to have help from so many partners: Caltrans, the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, and the Transportation Authority of Marin. And we're glad to have your help too. It's going to take all of us working in partnership to put this puzzle together. MTC and its agency partners are doing a lot of technical work along the Highway 37 corridor right now, looking not just for the quickest and most effective ways to reduce congestion, but also considering how sea level rise will affect the highway and change the outlines of the puzzle over time, as well as searching for opportunities to become better stewards of the sensitive wetlands that flank the highway. One big challenge is how to apply all the different kinds of information we're gathering and deliver practical and specific solutions that will improve the quality of travel. The many thousands of people who use Highway 37 each day. That will improve the quality of life for the plants and animals that live in the Baylands, and that will continue to deliver benefits even as San Pablo Bay extends its reach in the years ahead. One corridor, one team, many solutions. I'm so pleased you have chosen to join the team. Forward to hearing which solutions you think are best suited to this very complicated piece of the Bay Area's transportation puzzle.
Fantastic. That's Teresa McMillan. Now, our final welcome message tonight as we get going is a live one. We're very excited to have newly appointed Caltrans Bay Area District Director and my boss's boss, Dina Eltawansi, here. Live address. Dina?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Bart, for the warm introduction. I would like to again start by welcoming everyone who's attending here with us tonight, our first Planning and Environmental Linkage public outreach meeting, focusing on the entire corridor of the State Route 37 from Marin to Solano County. This is the very first time using this PEL process, and we're really excited to be moving forward with our projects on this route. I would like to thank Senator Dodd for opening this meeting by acknowledging our efforts and the challenges that we're facing moving forward as one collective team, working to identify solutions that will benefit future generations of Californians. And we hope that this acts as a model throughout the state and the nation. I would like to also thank MTC Teresa McMillan for her words about State Route 37's importance to the region. As she stated, we are dedicated to working together to be good stewards of the environment, and we are focused on improving the quality of life of people and all living things existing and passing through this corridor. In a minute, you will be meeting our talented, multidisciplinary team of professionals from several different organizations that are committed to improving this route. But first, I would like to make it clear that our focus tonight is on sharing information and listening to what you have to say. Your comments are a very necessary part of this PEL process and are really very critical to our success moving forward. Throughout this presentation, our team will lay out all the ways you can provide your ideas and comments. I'd really like to stress how important is with helping us make decisions moving forward. As you've heard and will continue to hear through, there are so many challenges and so many challenging aspects to the work that we're doing along this corridor, but there are also so many promising solutions. So with your help, we will make decisions and improve the important corridor now and for generations to come. Again, thank you for your participation. And now I would like to introduce Stefan Galvez. He is the Caltrans District Division Chief of Environmental Planning, who will go over tonight's agenda, introduce our team members, and get us started. Stefan?
Thank you, Dina. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Stefan Galvez, and I'd like to welcome you also to our PEL study for the Route 37 study. The PEL study we're embarking on vision for Route 37. And as we mentioned before, your input is very, very important. Before we go to the agenda and begin the meeting, I'd like to provide a highlight of the general framework of the transportation what the transportation agencies and Caltrans are doing in terms of addressing the many challenges in the corridor. Basically, we have a three-pronged approach. The work that is taking place immediately right now to make sure that the route remains safe and usable. We call this immediate activities. And this includes regular maintenance of the route, raising the pavement, keeping it in good condition, installation of pumps, and other monitoring activities, again, to keep the route open to the public and safe. We also have interim projects and activities which we're all working together, all the transportation agencies in the area, to make sure that we deliver some improvements, some much needed relief in the near to mid-term timeframe, about 3 to 5 years. And then we have the long-term and ultimate work, as we call it, which will develop a facility which will be resilient long-term with 2100 and beyond, to be able that a facility that is going to be able to survive the impacts from sea level rise and address the other deficiencies that we have. So like to keep that in mind, because this is going to be providing some context to our discussion today. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and go through the agenda. We have basically 6 areas that we're going to touch upon. And the first is the introduction of the PEL, basically what the PEL is intended to do, how it fits on the recent and ongoing studies, as well as your role on the study, right? The second part of the agenda is to provide the background on State Route 37. We want to show you also a tool where you could explore additional data and provide comments on it. So summarizing those needs, those issues and challenges that have been identified, and also finding out a little bit more about any new challenges and issues that we may not have seen before. Also a key for the PEL study and your involvement, we want to share and seek your input on the draft purpose statement and goal, which we've been working on recently with information that we have to date. Again, that interaction with you is going to be really, really key. And then we're going to be talking about alternatives development. You know, what's that process? How do we get your input? How do you help us define those alternatives and examining different alignments and design considerations from prior studies and studies that we're doing right now. And then we want to make this very interactive, right? We're going to have a question and answer session with a group of experts who I'm going to be introducing really shortly. And we want to really hear from you. So we cannot overstress the need for you to put your comments in the chat, reach out to us, and so we could provide those comments and also capture your observations, your comments, your concerns, so we could make prepare a really good PEL study. We'll talk about the next steps, you know, what's going to be happening in the future as part of this PEL study. So let's go through the introduction for the team of professionals who will be interacting with you. We have Tammy Massingale, who is our headquarters Caltrans District 4 coordinator, and she's our lead on this PEL study. We have Dick Fahey, Senior Transportation Planner, Caltrans District 4. We also have Kelly Hirschberg, the Regional Project Manager. And some of you may have seen Kelly in many of these meetings. We also have Sergio Ruiz, who is our Complete Streets Coordinator here in Caltrans District 4, and a great guy to talk to. I always enjoy my conversations with Sergio. We have Lindsay Vivian, our Office Chief for Environmental Analysis in District 4. We have Yolanda, Senior Environmental Planner, also in Caltrans District 4. And you met Bart Ney. He provided the welcoming, and Bart Ney is our Office Chief for Public Affairs, and he's going to be jumping in and out of this meeting. So that is the Caltrans team, but we work so closely together with all our partner agencies. So I want to acknowledge and recognize all hands who will be with us today representing our partner agencies, including Janet Wiseman, From the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, Janet is the State Route 37 Corridor Program Manager. Also from MTC, with us is Kevin Chen, Director of Projects and Programming. And we also have Ashley Nguyen, the Director of Design and Project Delivery, also from MTC. Partners from the North Bay, Port North Bay counties. We have Nick Nguyen, who's the Principal Project Delivery Manager with TAM, the Transportation Authority of Marine. We're also fortunate to have James Cameron, Director of Projects and Programming from Sonoma County Transportation Authority. We also have Sanjay Mishra, Project Manager and Engineer from the Napa Valley Authority. And we're also quite fortunate to have Janet Adams joining us today. She's the Deputy Executive Director and Director of Projects from Solano Transportation Authority. So they're going to be helping us out on the panel discussion and interacting with you. As we mentioned before, we want to make this a very interactive event. And so the first area of that interaction is going to be we have two polling questions for you. So we get to know who you are, who's participating in this meeting, and also how you heard about it. So what you have in front of you is a poll. There are actually two polling questions. So you need to scroll down to complete the first one and then go to the second one. You could do so by scrolling down, or the bar on the right-hand side, you could scroll down. And we're going to take just a minute, right? About 30 seconds each to give you time to provide your answers. Okay, thank you so much. We'll just take a few more seconds. Thank you for your participation. You know, the public outreach and interaction with the members of the community and all the stakeholders, it's really important. So understanding how well we are communicating with you, how are we getting your input is going to be important for us, and who you are. So this is, you know, really important for us. Thank you. Okay, let's take just a little bit longer here, about 20 seconds. And then we're going to just highlight the outcome, your responses. Don't forget to hit the submit button at the end. Great. So, so far we have some pretty good participation spread out fairly evenly across the spectrum. So traveling public, we have almost 20% of you are members of the traveling public, so that's great. We're really, really happy to get that participation. Public agencies, we have about 10% of them. Organizations, environmental organizations, and other members of the community, we have about 20% of you, so that's great. Let's scroll down here and see how you heard about this meeting. We got about 18%, almost 20% from the resilient37.org website. Word of mouth, 23%, that's great. We want to make sure that everybody hears about this. Okay, Caltrans website, about 10%. So great, thank you so much. So really appreciate that. What we're going to do right now is like to have a video that has been prepared, which will provide some context for you. It's about 4 video. It's in YouTube, and we're going to present it right here. You could also look at this video on your own, on your phone, and you could share with others. I believe that we're going to try to put on the chat the link to this YouTube video, and then shortly thereafter, we're going to have also a pre-recorded clip about the context of the corridor. So with that in mind, thank you. And let's go ahead and take a look at these videos. Thank you.
Highway 37 is a critical piece of the Bay Area mobility puzzle. The 21-mile corridor connects Solano County cities and some of the most affordable housing in the Bay Area, with jobs in Napa, Marin, and Sonoma counties. Yet, the route is challenged by the issues of congestion, flooding, and sea level rise, as well as limited access for bikes or pedestrians. Even pandemic, traffic flow on Highway 37 is routinely pinched by a 10-mile bottleneck. This stretch in particular, from Sears Point to Mare Island, one lane in each direction, separated by a concrete barrier, means westbound traffic backs up in the morning, adding up to 30 minutes to the typical commute and impacting Vallejo streets as drivers divert through Mare Island. In the evening, eastbound traffic backs up from Sears Point to beyond Lakeville Highway, adding as much as an hour and 20 minutes to commute times for some drivers, and extra safety problems for drivers who have diverted onto Lakeville Highway. There is no easy alternative to Highway 37. As you can see in these two existing options, drivers forced to detour north or south would have to travel twice as far to get from Vallejo to Novato or vice versa. A commitment to equity requires a reliable link between the comparatively affordable housing in Solano County and job markets to the west. And Highway 37 can be a viable route for future transit service only if buses can avoid congestion. The situation can be even worse in the winter. Existing levees protect the low-lying highway from everyday flooding, but heavy rains and king tides can shut down the entire highway, as happened for 28 days in 2017 and for 8 days in 2019 due to flooding at the Novato Creek crossing. Rising sea levels will require a permanent long-term solution. That's why Caltrans, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and the transportation authorities in Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano counties have formed a single team to team with you to develop workable ideas and design a modern, resilient Highway 37 that's higher, safer, greener, and built to last. All options are being considered, including the existing alignment, a new bridge across San Pablo Bay, or an inland retreat. Is reducing congestion a priority? In addition to providing transportation for cars and trucks, how should Highway 37 accommodate bikes, pedestrians, buses, and maybe even trains? What about conserving wetlands and wildlife, or greater public access to broaden opportunities for all to enjoy the natural resources that flank the highway? It will take years and probably billions of dollars that are not yet available to make this team already is working on short and intermediate term improvements to ease congestion and reduce flooding risk. On the Marin County end of the corridor, crews already have raised the pavement elevation, built concrete flood walls along critical segments of Novato Creek, installed new drainage systems, culverts, and slide gates, and acquired inflatable rubber bladders and portable pumps for deployment before major storms. Work set to begin soon includes more paving and repair work, mowing and weed abatement. The Highway 37 team is also looking at options for reducing congestion in the 10-mile bottleneck between Sears Point and Mare Island. These include a 3-lane highway with movable median barriers for a carpool lane that operates westbound in the morning and eastbound in the evening, and using the current shoulders for either part-time or full-time carpool lanes in each direction. It would take about 4 years and cost $1 million. Challenges include avoiding impacts on sensitive wetlands and minimizing the use of any bay fill. The other big issue, of course, is money. For both the interim congestion relief alternatives and a long-term project to completely transform Highway 37, tolls may be a practical solution that can serve as a match to secure other regional, state, and federal dollars. What do you think are the right solutions for the Highway 37 puzzle? We look forward to hearing from you. as we discuss the past, the present, and especially the future of Highway 37. One corridor, one team, many solutions. We're glad you are part of the team, and we welcome your ideas for solutions along Highway 37 and in the San Pablo Baylands.
Good evening. My name is Stefan Galvez Abadia. I'm the District Division Chief for the Environmental Division in Caltrans District 4. As you saw in the video, State Route 37 is a 21-mile long interregional route located along the northern shore of San Pablo Bay with ecologically rich baylands, biological and cultural resources, and is also considered part of the Pacific Flyway for migratory birds. State Route 37 provides a direct link for commuters, freight, and recreational traffic between US 101 to the west and I-80 to the east. Without this key transportation link in place, traffic detours are over 40 miles long. So we think of Route 37 as having three distinct portions. The western four-lane expressway portion, which is shown here in the red, from US 101 on. The middle two-lane conventional highway portion, shown here in green, from State Route 121 to Merrill Island. And finally, an eastern four-lane freeway portion, which is shown here in the yellow, from Merrill Island to I-80. So to address these long-term challenges, Caltrans, MTC, and the 4 North Bay counties are collaborating to develop a site-specific and corridor-wide solution. So we need your input for these studies. For example, MTC is currently conducting a study called the Ultimate Sea Level Rise Resilient Design Alternatives Assessment. Those limits are shown here in orange. The study is underway and involving stakeholders within the western portion of the corridor, with a focus on the unique State Route 37 issues faced by migrants. In addition, a previous design alternatives assessment study looked into options of how to balance congestion and sensitive environment in the middle portion of the corridor, which is shown. Each of these studies and planning processes will benefit from obtaining public input. While this is not the only time we will seek your input, this stage is important because it's going to help us shape the Pell Studies draft project purpose and need and the range of solutions. And now I'd like to turn it over to Tammy Massengale, who will tell us more about the Pell study and your involvement in the Pell process.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. I am Tammy Massengale. I am the Caltrans Division of Environmental Analysis's headquarters coordinator for the Bay Area District 4. I am co-leading the Pell process with Stefan. In our first module, we will focus our attention on the purpose and benefits of a planning and environmental linkages or Pell study, by first examining why is Caltrans and our partners preparing a Pell for the State Route 37 corridor. Then we will describe the relationship of the State Route 37 Pell to other State Route 37 corridor studies, the relationship of Pell to project development processes, and then how the Pell information and decisions, and importantly, your input will be used in subsequent National Environmental Policy Act or NEPA and California Environmental Quality Act or CEQA environmental processes. So now, let's look at what a Pell study and its associated process is intended to accomplish and how it integrates planning while also streamlining subsequent environmental processes for project. The Pell process is a voluntary, flexible, and collaborative planning process. It examines broad transportation, environmental, community, and economic goals early in the planning process. And Pell studies allow agencies to look at the big picture by examining a broad area or corridor. Pells establish long-term transportation visions and set a stage for focused future projects. Preliminary data and considers a conceptual level of design, traffic analysis, and an evaluation of environmental impacts. Pell also solicits input and, if possible, support from the public, tribes, elected officials, resource agencies, and other stakeholders regarding agency transportation decisions. It establishes buy-in from agencies and stakeholders on corridor vision, purpose and need, alternatives, and consideration of key environmental issues. The process encourages working relationships and early agency involvement, which enables more effective decision-making. Now, let's look at some of the benefits of a Pell. Some of the key benefits are realized from examining environmental and community values early in transportation project planning. This includes involving agencies and others to find both concerns as well as opportunities for collaboration. It also allows more participation in helping shape transportation solutions. One of the direct outcomes of a Pell study is that the enhanced and early coordination with resource agencies and the public yields better transportation programs and projects that serve communities' transportation needs more effectively. The Pell supporting studies provide agency with tools to design better projects while avoiding and minimizing impacts on communities and natural resources. Improved interagency relationships will also help to resolve differences on key issues, moving from planning through design and ultimately project implementation. Another benefit of a Pell study is improved project delivery timeframes by minimizing potential duplication and other environmental compliance processes, thus creating one cohesive flow of information. This slide will present a high-level review of the Caltrans project delivery process. A need, this pink circle, is identified by stakeholders to improve or correct a current problem. The first phase is the project initiation document or PID phase of the project. During this phase, a high-level purpose and need is developed and alternatives are identified. Also during this phase, the project cost is identified along with the schedule. The outcome is a programming document that goes to the California Transportation Commission for approval and funding for the next phase of the project. Project approval and environmental document, also known as PA&ED, is when the purpose, need, and alternatives are refined. Design is completing preliminary design and the environmental practitioners are completing technical studies. The final products include the environmental approval and the project report. At the end of PA&ED, two phases begin. Right-of-way, where the agents are working with property owners to obtain rights of entry, purchase of right-of-way, and then at the end of the phase, the surveyors complete monumentation for the project. The other phase is plans, specifications, and estimates, also known as PS&E. During PS&E, the designers are finalizing the design, writing the specifications, and completing the construction costs for the project. Concurrently, the environmental staff is working with resource agencies to obtain permits and, if necessary, complete mitigation. The last phase is construction. This is when the project is built and opened to the traveling public. The planning and environmental linkages process takes a lot of work that is typically segmented and brings it together. The detailed purpose and need is developed and a thorough alternatives analysis is completed. These products are moved into the environmental process, saving time to complete the PA&ED phase. Another challenge is how to integrate transportation planning with the needs and priorities of municipalities, agencies, and this integrated planning graphic represents the best practice concept of transportation planning as a layering of the many local components that affect the transportation system. While resource data can be integrated at any stage of the transportation process, early integration is the best since it is much more difficult to embrace resource agency goals and priorities at later stages. Early coordination has to provide better protection of natural and cultural resources, but also to maximize the efficient use of scarce staff and financial resources by flagging potential problems before the narrowing of alternatives options and the completion of detailed design work. The failure to identify and address inconsistent or incompatible goals and priorities among transportation and resource agencies early typically poses a major source of conflict program project development. Throughout the PEL process, we will be using information from previous studies. In the next module, Dick will walk you through how you can access some of this information and provide us with feedback. In October of 2020, Caltrans District 4 initiated the State Route 37 Ultimate Corridor Planning and Environmental Linkages PEL study from US 1 to identify transportation needs, consider alternatives, and develop a comprehensive and collaborative transportation vision for this critical corridor. Since this is the first PEL on the state highway system in California, we spent a couple of months educating our resource agency partners and stakeholders on the PEL, similar to what you've just discussed with you. As you can see, the last few months have led us to our meeting today. We have conducted meetings with our resource agency partners and stakeholder working group. In those meetings, we identified needs, looked for data gaps, and drafted a purpose statement that we will be discussing in Module 3. The PEL will look to finalize its purpose and needs statement following our meeting tonight. The PEL will then start working on the alternatives analysis. We are planning on a public meeting late this calendar year to discuss. We anticipate completing the PEL in the summer of 2022.
Okay, that was probably a lot of information, but now we're going to just take a few moments and ask you a question using another poll. So the question that we have for you, wow, you guys are fast, that's awesome. Have you ever participated in the development of a highway project? So we'll give this a little bit of time just so that I can see more folks putting their answer in, and that's very exciting. Okay, I think we're going to be closing it here. Got a few more folks that need to vote. So if you haven't voted, take a minute to do that. Well, looking at these results here, several of you, which is very exciting, have helped us or have helped one of our transportation agency partners develop a project. So that's wonderful. For those that haven't, we're really happy to have you, and we want to hear from you and make you part of this process. And with that, I'm going to turn this next segment over to Dick.
Hi, I'm Dick Fahey, a senior transportation planner here at Caltrans District 4. I've been working in the sea level rise, vulnerability, resiliency space with Caltrans for the past 10 years, both with our internal functional units and our external partner agencies. Today, I want to talk to you about the climate change and sea level rise impacts to State Route 37 and how we're planning for the future process. In this module, we wish to orient you with the various issues, opportunities, and sensitive resources located within the State Route 37 study area. To assist in public engagement and involvement in this study, Caltrans has developed the State Route 37 public comment web app, as you see here. The map is hosted on the ArcGIS online platform and is available to everyone at the link shown in the presentation. Once you enter the sessions, you will be able to explore this corridor through this digital map. Within this web app, you can explore available data for the study area. There's data on sea level rise, land use, bicycle and pedestrian trails, access points, wetland restoration areas, and much more. There are even links where you can view and interact with 3D renderings. These renderings have been created to assist in visualizing alternatives that have been previously discussed for State Route 37 in past corridor planning and design alternative assessment studies. Once you familiarize yourself with the platform and explore the data, you can also provide comments directly within the map using the Add a Comment tool that is embedded within this resource. Comments can be added for a point of interest, a line drawing, or an area drawing. We look forward to your engagement in this process. Climate change and the threats from sea level rise will critically impact the study corridor and surrounding ecosystems. The State Route 37 corridor currently experiences issues with flooding during winter rains and high tide events, and with the ever-increasing threat of sea level rise, the State Route 37 corridor will experience increasing flooding due to the roadway's low lying elevation and proximity to San Pablo Bay. The most immediate impact of sea level rise is increased flooding, so that lands that did not previously experience tidal inundation would be newly flooded. In addition, changes in wave height and run-up and increased erosion from wave action at the new shoreline edges will impact shoreline areas as sea levels rise. Currently, State Route 37 relies on a complex, interconnected system of levees along major creeks and rivers for flood protection. Many of these levees are privately owned and were not constructed specifically for protecting State Route 37 from flooding. Without modifications, current sea level rise projections show that areas of State Route 37 would be permanently inundated with only 36 inches of sea level rise and could be exposed to storm surge flooding by a 25-year coastal storm event today, or a 5 to 10-year coastal storm event with only 6 to 12 inches of sea level rise. Here you can see the current elevations of the roadway and rail facilities within the corridor compared to the high-end estimate of 7 feet of sea level rise by the end of the century. The existing infrastructure would not be sustainable in its current configuration if these predicted sea level rise scenarios come to pass. Without taking action now to make bold and forward-leaning planning decisions for these conditions, those that rely on this corridor will be the most impacted. But options do exist. Here you can see a rendering for how a viaduct alternative that has been proposed during past studies could promote resiliency against change. This, among many other alternatives, will be considered and evaluated during the Pell planning process to address the flooding and sea level rise challenges that face this critical corridor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Vivian, and I'm the Office Chief for the Office of Environmental Analysis in Caltrans District 4. We are an office of 30 conduct environmental review on transportation projects on the state highway system in the 9-county Bay Area. In addition to that, at Caltrans, I'm focused on working with others, including other divisions, to improve the integration of environmental considerations into our project planning and system planning processes. These factors include wildlife connectivity, fish passage, and sea level rise adaptation. I'm going to spend the next few moments with you talking about the ecological and hydrological factors in the San Pablo Bay along Highway 37. State Route 37 is an important corridor that runs along San Pablo Bay and connects Marin, Sonoma, Napa, and Solano counties to the greater Bay Area region. San Pablo Bay is characterized by broad expanses of shallow bays and tidal and seasonal wetlands that once encompassed more than 50,000 acres, as shown here within the historic Baylands boundary. There are several habitat types found in the San Pablo Bay, including tidal wetlands, that serve as a nursery for fisheries, wintering areas for migratory birds, habitat for a variety of native wildlife species, many of which are threatened and endangered at the state and federal level, and sources of nutrients for aquatic species. During the Pell planning process, numerous sensitive resources and variables will need to be considered to create a holistic and long-term vision for this corridor. One variable that will be considered during the Pell process will be how long-term improvements to State Route 37 can integrate with existing and planned land. For example, State Route 37 occurs along sensitive baylands and crosses through various lands and areas that are protected from development. There is a patchwork of land ownership in the study area. Some lands are managed at the federal level and include areas such as the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Other lands are managed by the state and include the Napa-Sonoma Marshes Wildlife Area, which is managed by the California. There are several other parcels in the study area that are under public and private ownership. During the Pell process, the team will look at both existing and proposed land uses within the study area and take into consideration plan changes to those uses. There are many efforts underway currently that have a goal of restoring the ecological functions and improving upon those functions of the Bay. These include several efforts to improve, to enhance and restore wetlands found in San Pablo Bay. The success, as you can see here, the success of redesigning State Route 37 is dependent upon collaboration with several partners, stakeholders, local communities, users of the highway, and the public. This engagement will allow Caltrans, MTC, and the transportation agencies in the North Bay to identify changing environmental conditions within these ecosystems. During the Pell planning process, your engagement is being sought for the redesign of State Route 37. It will determine how ecological resilience and other factors can be integrated into the redesign of the highway facility and facilitate adaptation to sea level rise over the long term.
My name is Sergio Ruiz. I am the Complete Streets Coordinator for Caltrans Bay Area District 4, where I am responsible for managing the district's Complete Streets program and coordinating with local agency partners and stakeholders to improve walk state transportation network. Today, I want to talk to you about multimodal access along the corridor, including transit options and walking and biking paths. State Route 37 is the most traveled east-west corridor in the North Bay, and we expect demand to grow over time. The implementation of mid and long-term solutions within the State Route 37 corridor will include consideration of how best to equitably provide transportation opportunities, including improving multimodal options within the corridor. Currently, no existing transit or passenger rail service exists, making the State Route 37 corridor a clean slate for implementing a multimodal solution. However, this also means that there's a lack of data on available transit usage and the propensity for such usage within the corridor. In 2019, the 4 North Bay County transportation agencies initiated a travel behavior and transit feasibility study markets assessment between the cities in the North Bay, which found that a majority of State Route 37 travelers have their origin in Solano County and their destination in Marin County. The study also found that a high percentage of trips along the corridor are commute trips. Users are primarily originating from the relatively lower cost housing markets of Solano County and traveling west along the corridor in the morning for access to the job markets of Marin and Sonoma counties, with a reverse commute in the evening. Identifying suitable multimodal opportunities and how best to implement them along this corridor is an important consideration during this Pell study. Park and ride opportunities exist along each end of the State Route 37 corridor that could bolster existing carpooling and/or van pooling options. Improvements can include providing additional parking spaces, as well as drop-off locations. SMART stops may also expand in the future, and the Pell study will consider how the long-term vision for the State Route 37 corridor can integrate carpool and vanpool options with microtransit, express bus connections, or even future passenger rail opportunities if they become viable. The Pell will also consider how best to integrate bicycle and pedestrian facilities along the corridor. These facilities can accommodate both as well as commuting users, especially with increased access to electric bicycles. Here you can see the existing recreational access points currently located along State Route 37. These points allow for the public to pursue recreational and educational opportunities within the North Baylands. You can also see how existing District 4 bicycle access data intersects with existing recreational access points within the study area. The long-term solution for the State Route 37 corridor will also need to consider how best to integrate the existing bicycle trails and access points along with future bicycle and pedestrian trails such as the San Francisco Bay Trail. Using existing data and your feedback during this study, the Pell team will evaluate alternatives so that no form of multimodal travel will be precluded by alternatives recommended during this process. You can see a multi-use path on this conceptual causeway design. With your input, we can evaluate where the right access points are located, what multimodal options are considered, and how best to integrate bicycle and pedestrian facilities into the study. This will allow the long-term vision for the corridor to include a holistic, equitable, and integrated solution for the wide range of corridor users.
Hi, this is Yolanda Rivas, Caltrans Senior Environmental Planner, and I'm here to talk to you about why equity and accessibility are important in the SR 37 corridor planning process. While many variables must be weighed, the ultimate solution will need to address the critical importance of State Route 37 to both the region and the North Bay's transportation. An important component of this system is accessibility and connectivity for disadvantaged communities and communities of concern. By using the available community demographic information, such as MTC's Communities of Concern, which shows communities that could be considered disadvantaged or vulnerable now and in the future, we can evaluate how long-term changes to the corridor can best serve the needs of all users, including these populations. The importance of the 21-mile State Route 37 as a connector between housing and jobs was demonstrated in the multimodal presentation and is of critical importance to the region. Maintaining access and connectivity within this region is imperative to providing equitable transportation solutions for all communities that rely on this corridor. Therefore, points may need to change or be modified as this corridor is upgraded to meet the challenges of climate change and sea level rise. Currently, 23 roadway intersections and interchanges exist within the corridor. These access points illustrate how State Route 37 functions as part of the larger regional transportation network in the North Bay. As design alternatives are developed, opportunities to maintain and improve access will be evaluated. Route functionality and movement patterns are tied to travel markets. We will build off prior studies that have identified who is using the corridor, when they are using it, and key origin and destination travel patterns. Without action, many access points and intersections, such as the Lakeville Highway intersection with State Route 30, inundated as sea levels rise. And the users who rely on the critical link would be forced to use alternate routes unless design solutions such as this causeway concept are made a reality. By focusing on a large planning area and considering all available data, Caltrans and its partners will develop a long-term vision that addresses the numerous challenges and needs of this corridor.
And now we've got a polling question. We'd love to hear from you. Which of the following issues along the corridor concern you the most? We're really pleased with the level of participation that we're getting tonight, and we hope that it just simply increases in the future. Right now, see, we're still able to take more responses. Traffic congestion is a big one. Flooding, preventing road closures is another important one. It's not surprising some of the issues that we've been dealing with, 2017 closure and 2019 closure, that has shaped a lot of why we're here tonight. So here we go. Right now we've got flooding is 52%, traffic congestion 63%, and restoration and health of the ecosystem is another biggie, which again is very consistent, heard in the past through our stakeholders and our outreach. Thank you very much for participating.
We are going to now look at the PEL's draft purpose statement and its supporting goals and objectives. First, let's look at why a purpose statement is so important for transportation projects. The purpose statement is what helps shape the development of alternatives. Within transportation, there are certain project purposes that are used to deliver projects that are focused on transportation resources. This is also the first touch point between a transportation project and the resource agency. Does the resource agency approve? The PEL process also is intended to produce products that may be taken into subsequent NEPA and CEQA environmental processes. The purpose is one of the first products the PEL process will produce. You may wonder how non-transportation issues like climate change and restoration are included as part of the project. Goals and objectives are powerful tools that can be used as evaluation alternatives. We will discuss the goals and objectives a little later on. A need is a specific problem, area for improvement, or opportunity that exists now or is expected in the future. This word cloud shows the needs that have been identified by the PEL stakeholders. The larger the letters indicate the frequency the need was identified. You also will have the opportunity to identify any needs you have on the corridor. We look at each need and how it can be studied or measured. Each need for action is used to evaluate alternatives through measurable objectives. The purpose and need statement may identify other goals related to the primary transportation purpose. The PEL team will determine whether a need should be addressed in the purpose statement with a transportation-related objective or as a goal or objective that can be used to differentiate amongst alternatives in the screening process. Building off previous studies and stakeholder involvement on the PEL process thus far, we have drafted a preliminary project purpose statement that we will look at in the next 5 slides. Remember from our discussion earlier that alternatives developed for the PEL study must meet the project purpose as articulated in the purpose statement. The first element is preserving a critical regional transportation corridor that is resilient to extreme events while integrating ecological resiliency, which facilitates adaptation to sea level rise. As you may recall, sea level rise, resiliency, and flooding were 2 important needs identified for the corridor. The next element is providing and increasing person throughput. As you can see from the picture, and as you probably have experienced, the backups can be extensive along the corridor. We understand it is important to you as the traveling public to have a reliable time frame to get across the corridor. The next element is providing safe mobility for bicyclists and pedestrians. One of the important needs identified by this route for bicyclists and pedestrians. Considering e-bikes are gaining in popularity, a safe route could allow folks to commute to work. The next element is maintaining and enhancing public access, including to recreational areas. For example, the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge provides numerous recreational opportunities that include wildlife viewing, wildlife photography, hiking, boating, fishing, and hunting. This area allows for public enjoyment of the refuge while still protecting the wildlife and habitats. The last element is providing an equitable transportation solution that improves access for and provides meaningful benefits to underserved communities. In December 2020, Caltrans adopted an equity statement that recognizes our leadership role and unique responsibility in state government to eliminate barriers to provide more transportation for all Californians. We are reaching out to all communities to listen to and incorporate their needs on our projects. Several of the needs identified by the stakeholders do not have a transportation nexus. However, by using goals and objectives as evaluation criteria, we preserve the purpose statement, which must be focused on transportation. To create a holistic project, goals and objectives can link and stakeholder priorities to the transportation project to produce both an effective transportation solution and environmentally responsive outcome. In the next 4 slides, we will be discussing the draft goals and objectives that have been developed for the PEL. The first goal is to evaluate State Route 37 alternatives for long-term integrated solutions that address both highway vulnerabilities and facilitate the restoration of surrounding bayland with the anticipated sea level rise affecting the corridor. Another goal is to improve route reliability, mobility, and connectivity across all modes and maintain public access for corridor commuters, residents, and essential services and industries in the area. Another goal is to implement, to the extent practicable, nature-based solutions to enhance resilience in the coastal environment to flooding, wave action, and erosion, while simultaneously facilitating natural ecosystem function and adaptation to the stresses of climate change. By planning for future conditions and working through partnership, collaboration, and cooperation with federal, state, and local agencies, we can achieve ancillary benefits such as improved water quality, habitat, and fisheries within the Northern Baylands. These are the draft goals and objectives we have identified so far. Are there other needs or goals you want to see included in the PEL study? I encourage you to leave a message on the phone line at area code 510-286-1204, complete the survey, or use the map to notate your comments. We look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Hirschberg, Regional Project Manager with Caltrans. I've been working for the department almost 30 years. I have experience working the design, construction, hydraulics, and have been Regional Project Manager for the last 14 years. So during the last 14 years, have delivered numerous projects and really excited to share with you on the State Route 37 PEL. Right. As I mentioned this evening, The key product of Pell study is a development of alternative that will meet the need of the corridor. Caltrans and its partner will be starting the development and screening of alternatives in the coming month. And we would like some initial input from public on the range of alternatives to be considered by the Pell team. A key challenge for the Pell study is understanding how sea level will evaluating available data, factoring risk, and deciding on a target for design year will ensure that an appropriate roadway elevation is identified. Here you can see the current elevation for the portion of the corridor. The Ocean Protection Council Guidance 2018 recommends the design includes a storm surge wave runoff when planning projects. When you factor in the sea level rise projection with the additional storm surge wave runoff, you can see how that could affect the elevation requirement for a roadway constructed on embankment. However, for structures such as a bridge and causeway, the minimum height is even greater because we have to account for a freeboard or the space underneath the bridge and causeway to keep the structure out of the wave action. The Pell team will be coordinating our sea level rise assumption on the previous studies and the update if needed. We also need to be adaptable in our approach, knowing the sea level rise projection and guidance may change over the course of the Pell study schedule and recognize we may need to modify a preliminary decision. 3 primary strategies exist for adapting infrastructure such as State Route 37 to sea level rise. The protect strategy entails building hard barriers such as seawalls or soft barriers like a nature-based levees and reefs to stop or buffer the encroaching water and protect assets from flooding. Accommodate strategy involves modifying assets such as highway so that they can accommodate regular or periodic flooding. And lastly, the relocate or retreat strategy involves relocating assets from potential flood zone by inland. Each of these strategies comes with a trade-off as shown on the following slides. And not all strategy will work every situation. For example, relocating existing properties could be disruptive, expensive, and not always logically possible. Armoring such much of the coast, however, is also not practical. Therefore, selecting which combination of the sea level rise adaptation strategy to use in particular location is an involved process, combining scientific research, locally specific information, public and stakeholder input and support, and both high-level and detailed planning. In complex situations such as the State Route 37 corridor, a hybrid approach of these strategy is often employed. Example of the how protect strategy could be used for the State Route 37 corridor. Hard protection, known as armoring, consists of constructing physical structures to keep water back, such as seawalls, retaining walls, and levees. Soft protection, or living shoreline, consists of efforts to enhance natural elements to buffer against the water, such as building up sand dunes, adding sand to beaching wetlands. Protect strategy have an advantage and disadvantage. One advantage is that it can allow existing development and infrastructure to remain in place. It can also be less costly than other strategies. The disadvantage is that hard protection can contribute to the beach erosion and increase flooding in adjacent area. Soft protection will likely become less viable strategy once sea level rise through the higher stage of projection level. The next adaptation strategy is accommodate. This approach modifies or replaces the infrastructure so that it can withstand the sea level rise without damage. Advantage of this approach is that it can allow existing development and infrastructure to remain in place once modified. Disadvantage is that it can be costly and difficult in states construction to modify existing development in place. Accommodate sea level rise can include the construction of a causeway, as you see here. Accommodation may also include the construction of an elevated roadway on an embankment, as shown here. Of a relocate or retreat includes the physically moving an asset or facility at risk to sea level rise. The advantage of this strategy is that it can provide space for beach and wetland to migrate inland as a water rise. This approach can ensure that infrastructure is or will be safe from flooding. However, the disadvantage of this approach are difficult, costly, or impossible to relocate existing infrastructure and potentially removing connection to local streets and roads. The Pell study will incorporate existing and past studies to determine the viable protect, accommodate, and retreat or relocate strategy. Here you can see alignment remain out of the floodplain of the Bayland marshes. These options consist of retreat approach by removing the roadway out of the projected floodplain. Here you can see the route, shorter route options. These options are consist with the accommodate approach by minimizing the length of the roadway over the floodplain may include a combination of causeway and embankment. Here's a route that follows the shore outline area. These options are consistent with the accommodate strategy by minimizing the length of the roadway over the projected floodplain. These options could be further minimize impacts to wetland areas by placing most of the alignment for the causeway on a causeway structure. Here are some alignment options that follow or utilize existing transportation corridors such as State Route 37 and or rail corridor. These options could be interpreted as both protect and accommodate because they are raising or protecting State Route 37 in place. This alignment option relocates State Route 37 onto a causeway over the San Pablo Bay. It is one of those options that employs both relocate and accommodate strategy. See on this graphic, there are many alignment options that can be considered in the alternative analysis process by the Pell team. We'll continue to develop these options in the coming month. Our question for this evening, are we missing any alignments or design consideration besides the embankment and causeway? You may share your thoughts or suggestions for alignments tonight through the chat discussion or following this meeting. You can use the many means and tools that we can discuss to provide your feedback. In addition to sea level rise, when we develop alternatives, we must consider how our proposed solution affect our communities, our environment, and of course, how a change in alignment may affect the use of 37. Here there are many considerations. What considerations are important to you? We'd like to hear from you and get your input. First, thank you for attending this evening. Please take a moment to fill out the questionnaire, email, or call us. Much of the information shared today can be found at resilient37.org website. Finally, we have an interactive map that we demonstrate earlier this evening. You can place your comment using the web application.
Hello again, this is Kelly Hirschberg. Thank you for listening about the alternative development and public input on the conceptual alignment. Poll. Okay, so question to you. What consideration should shape the range of alternatives? You have the option to select more than one response. So, right, I'll get those questions coming in. Great. Right. Protecting enhanced natural resources, providing modal options are kind of the first two. Addressing users' needs is coming pretty close. This is very dynamic polling right here. Okay. All right. So here's our result. The most of you, wow, I guess it's like the first, there's a three that are pretty close together. Protecting and enhancing the natural resources about 65%, and providing modal options with the 61%, and addressing users' needs is about 58%. So, well, thank you for providing us with your input. You know, this will definitely go into, as we're moving forward with studying the range of alternatives. Completes our module related to the alternative development and input from conceptual alignment. So I'm going to actually turn it back to Bart.
All right, thank you, Kelly. That was a lot of information, a lot of material, folks. So as you let it soak in, I'll remind you that our focus tonight was both to update you on this information and to hear from you. So we're to do the Q&A portion. If you submitted a question to receive tonight, but whatever comments or input you've given us, we'll be taking into consideration in the Pell study. And I got to say, it was great to see so much feedback in the polls. We're already starting to get a feel for the interest in state. If you haven't submitted a question yet, please submit one to the Enter Questions Here co-host in the chat. And a quick reminder, we don't have audio or video available in the meeting tonight in order to maintain bandwidth for this meeting and avoid technical glitches. Also, if you think of any questions after the meeting today, there are many ways to provide information. Kelly just went over them via questionnaire that's available, our mapping tool, and our email line and our phone line. So at any point in time, you can connect with us there, and at the resilient37.org website and our Caltrans website, you can connect to any one of those input sources. So now, as we get ready to start our Q&A session, let's hear some introductions from our panelists, and I will pass it over to you, Ashley. Greetings.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Nguyen. I'm the Director for Design and Project Delivery with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Kevin?
Hi, everyone. This is Kevin Chen. I'm with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. I'm the Assistant Director with the Design and Project Delivery section.
Hi, good evening. Jeanette Wiseman, and I am the State Route 37 Corridor Program Manager. Nick?
Good evening. My name is Nick Nguyen. I am with the Transportation Authority Marin. I'm a Principal Project Delivery Manager for TAN, in charge of monitoring and participating in the State Route 37 planning activities.
And I am
James.
James Cameron with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. SCTA is an engaged partner on the corridor, as well as we host the State Route 37 Resilient Policy Committee that happens about 4 times a year.
Good evening. I'm Sanjay Mishra, the Napa Valley Transportation Authority as a program manager engineer. And I'm cooperatively working with all the transportation authorities and our PL partners. Janet.
Good evening. I'm Janet Adams with the Solano Transportation Authority. I'm the Deputy Executive Director and Director of Projects. Not only are we an active participant in the entire corridor, we're also the lead on delivering improvements at State Route 37 Fairgrounds.
All right, so there is our talented group of panelists. We're going to move into the question and answer portion of the meeting tonight. And with that, I will pass the baton over to our moderator, Erica Sawyer. Erica?
Hi, good afternoon all. Thank you, Bart. We've been monitoring the chat during this presentation and we've received a number of questions. We have a number of questions in advance of this meeting. As Bart mentioned, there's a number of ways that you can continue to provide your input. So we'll get to those questions as well. As we go through the Q&A, the questions will be shown here on your screen so that everyone can follow along. And we're just about ready for the first question. Here is our first question. I'm stuck in traffic every day because of the backup at State Route 37. What are you going to do about it? Great question. For this question, I'd like to turn this over to Kelly to get this discussion started. Kelly, what is going to be done about traffic along State Route 37 121?
It's a great question. So, as we did the polling earlier, having a congestion relief was the top priority we heard. So there's a couple of the SHOP project as well as the MTC-led congestion relief project from Sears Point to Mare Island. So we had a public scoping meeting last summer, and the team is working diligently to our next step of having a draft environmental document. So I think with this, actually, I'd like to Chen from MTC provide any additional information.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kevin Chen. So as Kelly mentioned, and you've probably seen this in the introduction video. So we are working on an interim project between the Sears Point and the Mare Island, the middle portion of this corridor, which is pretty much a 10-mile bottleneck. So we're looking at reconfiguring from a 2-lane highway to either a 3-lane highway or potentially a 4-lane highway. With the additional lanes would be designated as HOV lanes to really encourage the use of carpooling and also more importantly for transit operators to actually start implementing transit service on this corridor. As we know, bus service is not available on this corridor right now. So we're in the environmental phase right now, hoping to get a draft to circulate to the public later this fall, and then the schedule is to complete the EIR by about mid of next year, and depending on funding and so forth, the plan is to finish construction by about 2024, 2025 or so. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you, Kevin. Does anyone else from the panel want? Before we move on to the next question. And as a reminder, we are only taking questions here in writing through the chat function. So please provide your questions and we'll get to them as we go along. Great. Okay, got the next question coming up. Have we considered expanding the railroad that runs alongside Highway 37 with a smart train public transportation, reducing traffic and pollution while allowing riders to be productive while commuting. Great question. Tammy, is this something you can get the discussion started?
Yes, thank you very much, Erica. Yes, we are considering a rail transit. We will get more in depth into the viability of rail when we move into the alternatives phase of the project, but we are definitely looking at it. And as a side note, we have been meeting with the Smart Train folks, so we are looking at it. Thank you, Erica.
Great. All right, appreciate that response. Okay. All right, and the next question. Oh, okay, all right, let's read this one. Does the Pell incorporate income-based private vehicle toll pricing like Norfolk, Virginia? For decades, low-income workers have been excluded from Marin and Sonoma by exclusionary zoning. Many now travel there to jobs along Highway 37, charging another regressive tax on the poor. Requiring them to use public transit for a cheaper trip could add hours and fail to reach many diffuse work sites in Marin and Sonoma. Another really good question. There's multiple parts to this question. For the first part of this, in terms of whether the Pell is going to look at private vehicle toll pricing, is that something, Ashley, is that something the discussion by addressing?
Sure, I'll take a first stab at it. Just a quick reminder that Senator Bill Dodd did introduce legislation in early 2020, looking to address traffic congestion along 37, as well as really thinking about how we can protect that corridor from the sea level rise due to climate change. That legislation is on hold, but I think the intent of the legislation to really create a tolling authority to raise capital funding for the ultimate State Route 37 project that addresses traffic, adapts to sea level rise, and really promotes and restores wetlands. But we're also acutely aware that there are quite a number of commuters that live in workforce housing in Vallejo and travel to jobs in Marin and Sonoma. And we know a toll would further burden their commute. So we do have plans to introduce a means-based toll where we really take into account what low-income folks can bear in terms of their commute and how it's priced. So we think that we have a mechanism in place to level the playing field, so to speak.
Great response, Ashley. Okay, next question. I hope that rail will be considered as a possible solution to congestion. There is already a rail line, an abandoned rail line along Highway 37. The future is rail, not autos. Tammy, can I turn this one back to you to get us started?
Great, thank you again, Erica. Yes, we will be looking at rail congestion. Like I indicated on my earlier response, we will be looking at that when we get into the alternatives phase. So thank you for the comment, really appreciate it.
Great, and another comment that we've gotten here is that these are some of the things that you can use the tool, go to the tool and you can actually click on that tool and provide your input as to where some of these things could be cited. So please take a look at the tool and all of the functionality that it provides. Okay, all right, we're getting some really great questions tonight. Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District has an important facility, Tubbs Island, for which we need to maintain access, located along the stretch between Mare Island and Sears Point. The the Vallejo community 1 million per year. So it's important we maintain access. What options for continued access along this stretch are being evaluated in both the short term and long term? Do you plan to engage with landowners along this stretch more in depth to coordinate on access points? Tammy, not to put you back on the spot, but is this something you can speak to the long term, and then we can hear from others about other options?
Certainly, thank you. We will be looking at all different types of access that currently exist along the route and additional access that we may need. So we're going to be looking at that. I'm very appreciative that the individual that made the question indicated how important it was, how Tubbs Island, the importance to Vallejo. So we will definitely take that into consideration. And for the next question about short-term and long-term, the short-term projects I can't really speak to, but for the Pell and the long-term, I will say that we will look at that. We will be working with landowners and involving them in the process once we get to the alternatives analysis portion of the Pell plan. So I don't know if one of the local agencies would like to, or one would like to help me out on that, on the short-term projects. That would be great.
Hi, Tammy, this is Kevin. Can I chime in just a little bit?
Please do. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as part of the interim project, we have been coordinating with the Vallejo Flood and Wastewater District in terms of the scope of the project. So we're definitely looking to maintain access at the Noble Road intersection, for example. And then we're also looking at, as part of the environmental review and design process, we'll be looking at potential intersection treatment or improvements to look at improving that access point. So that's part of the consideration for sure as part of the near-term project.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, thank you for that response. And as you're sending in these questions, please look in the participants tab. We have identified in the participants tab where it says enter questions. Please direct your questions to that participant. Enter questions. Excellent. Okay, next question. The whole process is flawed. You are intentionally avoiding the rail alternative and instead bulldozing ahead with a highway project that will increase VMT and fuel more climate change. None of the alignments are worth the price tag. We could start with Kelly or Stefan to address this question. How would you address the comments here about the process, and what can the public expect through this process going forward?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, we've been getting quite a few questions related to rail. So, SMART, currently there is a rail from US 101, I think the Hamilton pickup station, and all the way to the 80. So currently it is for the freight service only. And the SMART have prepared a documentation or report regarding what it will take to convert to the passenger rail. So that is a completed study. And as Tanya mentioned earlier, with the representative from the SMART regarding our continued coordination. So we recognize that it's not just the roads. We need to address the holistically, but how does State Route 37 shape up, including the rail. So recognizing completed study for converting from the freight or modifying it to the passenger rail is in part of our discussion as a part of the Pell process. So I'd like to actually invite James Cameron from SCTA to further add if he has any further thing to add.
The SMART is an engaged partner on this corridor as well. They are part of the Pell process. They are a stakeholder, and Consider Smart will be included in this Pell process that's launching now.
Great, thank you, James. All right, next question. Okay, great point here about the graphics. So the routes being illustrate the differences in the options at all. I think this is critically important. The graphics are terrible. Tammy, is this something else that you can talk about in terms of the routes and how all this information is going to be used to update some of the graphics and other details that the public is seeing here tonight?
Yeah, thank you. And good comment. We know that these meetings on Zoom are difficult. They're hard to see on people's computers. So we apologize for that. We're doing the best we can do. We're hoping that our meeting later in the year is going to be an in-person meeting, so we won't have to deal with this as complicated as it is. But if you go onto the mapping tool that we've talked about a couple of times, it will be very clear on what routes we've been talking alternatives. That was a very general overview of some of the routes that have been looked at in prior studies. We will be looking at those through this process and even looking at new routes that you all may propose. So again, I apologize that the graphics didn't work well for you. And if you'd like to be specific and pop that in the chat, we'll make sure that the next time we have something that we do a better job for that.
Hey, Tommy, I just wanted to add that we recognize that these meetings have a lot of limitations from the technical perspective. We would invite you guys to visit the websites for our different efforts, which we had posted and we'll remind you later. But sometimes that is probably the best way get a better resolution and better graphics. We're still in the process, and as we develop interim products, we're going to be posting those results and those documents and graphics on those websites. So it's kind of work in progress now, but we would hope that we'll be producing some of those in better shape, posting them for you guys. Okay, thanks.
Okay, very good questions. All right, please add the existing rail corridor, which is currently running freight rail and could be upgraded to provide passenger rail to the interactive map, or move that up with other rail questions. So I think Tammy already addressed this. Active maps. Will there be options to improve Bay Trail access during the interim portion of this project? Stefan, is this something that you can also address?
Yeah, I could take a first step. We always add enhancements, improvements to the system, and we're looking at a multimodal system here that addresses the needs for all members of society, for all modes of transportation. So the Bay Trail is an important component of that system. So that will be considered. There have been some sort of interim work trying to identify the different Bay Trail segments and some areas that could become an opportunity. So we'll continue to explore this. So the short answer is yes, we're going to be looking into it. Not sure if Kevin, you may want to add anything else, or James.
And again, Stefan, is this something that someone can go to the interactive tool and can, where they think some of these improvements can be made?
Absolutely.
Provide
Yeah, we want to
that
give you the
information?
tools to, to go ahead, and if there's specific locations that you want to highlight and you want us to pay more close attention to it, feel free to use those tools. Kevin, go ahead.
Thanks, Stefan. I think you covered it well. Yeah, I think we definitely want to look for opportunities. We know that there's been a lot of interest in looking at closing the Bay Trail gap closure. So I think we I guess, and our partner agencies will continue to look for resources to see if we can advance those projects forward.
Great, thank you for that response. Okay. The next question here. I live in American Canyon and I'm very concerned about extra traffic on State Route 20. Very congested and spilling onto local residential streets. How will you support us? Stefan, Sanjay, is this a question you'd like to get us started on?
Yes, I'll take the first cut at it. So yeah, definitely traffic bypassing Route 37 onto other areas, over other residential streets is a concern for all of us. We're trying to identify what may be those potential effects as a result of our activities. So that is something that we will be looking into it. I don't have any specifics at this moment about that, other than it's something that we're considering and we'll be looking into it. Sanjay, you'd like to comment?
Yes, I would like to say that, we understand that there are some spillovers from the Highway 37 traffic to 29. Some of the projects that actually we are working on going to relieve some of the congestion we have on 29, right, Soskel Junction project. And we're actually also going through some of the PID effort for the SR 29 corridor with City of American Canyon. But eventually when the interim projects actually take shape on 37, we expect that those additional the improvements for the interim project will eventually reduce traffic on 29. But we are working through this PEL process to come up with a traffic model to consolidate or confirm our assumptions, and we'll be providing those details as we go along with this process.
Great, thank you for that answer, Sanjay.
Thank you.
All right. Really great questions so far. And we're ready for our next question. Have alternatives to the traffic movement congestion at the intersection at Highway 121 and SR 37, such as a flyover for traffic 121? And Kelly, is this something that you can get our discussion started about what are some of these alternatives that may be considered?
Sure. Congestion intersection. Okay, so for the junction at State Route 121 and 37, what we are looking at as the ultimate, the interim actually immediately address the congestion relief pretty much at the grade. And I think one of the visual simulation we've seen earlier tonight does have a grade separation with a smart railroad at grade and the State Route 37 being elevated. So, certainly the range of alternatives that we study for the ultimate could consider the flyover and other options. So, yeah, we'll definitely include that as a part of our consideration.
Great. Thank you for that response. And by all means, if anyone else on the panel wants to chime in, please jump in. We've got a lot of really good questions here. We've got about 15 minutes left on this meeting. And as a reminder, if our panel is not able to questions tonight, your input and these questions will be used to address, will be taken into consideration in the Pell process. So we'll get through as many more of these as we can. Okay, here is a good question. Is the purpose of the project to continue the corridor, or is the purpose to continue to provide a direct means of conveying travelers and goods across San Pablo Bay? Second part, how much would it cost to raise the roadway 21 feet and each bridge 30 feet? Regardless of the selected alignment, the height requirements won't change. It will not be possible to raise only part of the corridor, 21 feet, for example. Third part of this question is, what is the design year? Is this going to be built out to the year 2100? If we are using public funds to raise this roadway, are we highly traveled state routes, which will be subject to sea level rise, such as 101, 80, and others? State Route 37 is the first to be affected, but how do we have the funds to fix all the routes that will need attention? How are these choices being factored into the Pell development? Really, 5 parts of this question. If we can start from the beginning and addressing the comment about need, and Tammy, if you could please get us started.
Yeah, most certainly. Thank you. Great question. A lot to unpack there. So like Erica indicated, I'll go ahead and give it a, I'll do the first part of it. So about the purpose. The purpose is to get people from point A to point B, if that helps answer that question. Set on a particular route due to the sea level rise. We may decide on a route like Kelly went through in her presentation. We may decide on a route that is completely over the bay or there could be a route that is, somewhat similar to the current alignment that is out there, or there may be an alignment up north. So that's when we're really gonna get into the details of that once we get the purpose statement finalized and start working on the alternatives. And at the meeting later this year, towards the end of this year, we will be really talking about those alternatives and getting in the nitty gritty on them. I am going to turn it over to another one of my colleagues on the cost. Hi, Kelly.
Sure. So we could actually have others chime in. So regarding the corridor raising a different elevation and the facility being there. So as Tammy mentioned, one of the what we need to do, or what we will do in the coming month, we'll be looking at the range of alternatives. So as far as a big projects like this with the sea level rise 21-mile corridor, we do have the accommodate, protect, and retreat options. And then, so those will be different range of alternatives that will be considered. So if we are considering the alternative within the existing alignment, San Pablo Bay is also very unique because the foundation of it is actually comprises of young bay mud. So even if we were to use an embankment to raise the State Route 37 to 21 feet alone, we do have to invest on the subsurface or foundation design. So it's not like you could just bring in the additional dirt or embankment material to raise up the elevation, but the subsurface, because it's a young bay mud and it's a compressible, so there will be significant costs associated with the investment that as well. Certainly causeway with the structure could be slightly more, but the cost differential between the two is not as different as what we are thinking. Now, as far as your design year questions about year 2100,
as I think previously Stefan has mentioned, it's a 2100 and beyond. Because typically when we design the structure, we're looking at good, 60 or 70 year of design and service life. A lot of what we could do as far as the ultimate project, given that it will be significantly expensive and costly, it will be available of a funding for us to implement. So all of that also needs to consider, design year. So what we're also looking at is even beyond than 2100 as far as the design year and the design parameter that we're considering. Yeah, this was a very long question. So I think we have a couple more regarding to sea level rise. So Dick, would you like to participate or provide a further explanation?
Yeah, Kelly, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Dick.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, thanks for this question, it's excellent. Yeah, in response to the question about our other highly traveled state routes that will be subject to sea level rise besides just State Route 37 in this region, such as 101 and 80. Yeah, you mentioned a couple of other critical routes we have in this region that are also vulnerable to sea level rise. 101 in Marin County, San Mateo County, 80, 880, pretty much everywhere surrounding the Bay Shore infrastructure is vulnerable to sea level rise. Do we have enough money to fix all those routes? Unfortunately, we don't. And so we have to, working with our partners and other agencies, come up with a way to prioritize how we're going to address, where the most needed fixes are in terms of addressing sea level rise. We have done, Caltrans has done a vulnerability assessment, so we're pretty well where our vulnerabilities are. We've also done work with BCDC, who has done similar work, and some of the counties such as Marin County and San Mateo County. We've worked with them on their vulnerability assessment. So we have a pretty good idea of where our vulnerabilities are, but how we're going to prioritize how and when to address those vulnerabilities is a challenge that we're facing along with a lot of other entities, local jurisdictions, and region are. So yeah, if you have suggestions on how we can fund some of these other needs in the region, please let us know or work with us. And
hey, Dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add that this question about do we have the funds to fix all the routes, and sea level rise is one of the biggest challenges, societal challenges that we're having to face nowadays, and it's a big problem. And clearly, we all together are trying to react to it, and we're trying to come together. There's a lot of efforts being done at the regional level as well as the state level. But this is a really difficult challenge. And clearly, we don't have a source of funding that is going to be able to fix that all in the short term. So we're working together with our partners. It's going to take a concerted effort together with the community, the legislators, society as a whole, to determine how we're going to be able to fund all these improvements. First is finding out, what are going to be the threats. And for that, Caltrans has conducted the vulnerability assessment. But as Dick mentioned, we have a whole network of infrastructure that surrounds the bay. Lots of it is going to be threatened, right, in the next few years, and some of it is being threatened right now. So this is all part of, for Route 37, we're going to be looking at that. For other routes, it's something that we're going to have to effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. In the interest of time, we will take two more questions. Very great questions so far in dialogue, so please keep them coming. And As mentioned, all of this will be used to inform the Pell process. Next question here. Would it be possible to run a ferry route from Vallejo that is closer to San Rafael, north of Sausalito, the Tiburon Ferry? Great question. All right, Stefan, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, is this something you'd like to get us started, and perhaps one of our partners might provide some further input?
Yeah, so I believe the issue of ferries is something that you know, has been explored to some extent. Again, we want to potential options. I don't have any specific answers for that. It's something that we could look in more detail. But I believe that MTC has done some work on that. So can I pass it on to you, Ashley, or Kevin?
I think Janet Adams could answer
Yes,
this question.
yes, Devin, I just want to say a couple words. It is possible, certainly, from Vallejo to San Rafael, we do have existing facilities at both those locations. So we did do a study looking at just that because we do think it was an obvious, why don't we run a ferry? The issue is ridership. So while it's possible to run it, the ridership would be very low just because there's not focused job centers in Marin. What we found is the commuters are really dispersed across the 37 corridor. So it is possible, it's just not high ridership.
Great, thank you for that answer, Janet. All right, over to our last question here before turning it over for closing remarks. Last question, since the Pell is focused on the long-term vision, which presumably should be something like moving people and goods reliably around the North Bay area for the next 100 years, manner to accommodate changing, uncertain demands and constraints, why is the purpose and need focused only on the existing highway rather than all transportation modes? Tammy, I think this is a great question for you to get us started on.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Erica. I'm sorry if it seems like the purpose and need is only focused on the highway. We will be considering modes of transportation when we are looking at the Pell. So, you know, if you want us to look at something specific, please feel free to put that in via a phone call to our phone number or an email, something like that. But we're going to be looking at all modes of transportation, not just the highway.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. And with that, this concludes our Q&A. I'd like to turn this over for closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to find the unmute button. Great conversation, great questions. So let's talk about kind of the schedule, where we're going next. And what this graphic here shows is the general schedule for the Pell. So some of you have participated in the previous discussions. We are here in the yellow box, May of 2021, where we're introducing the Pell to the general community, where we're talking about the draft purpose statement, and the next step is going to get into looking at refining the evaluation criteria, development alternative. All that is going in consideration the information that you've given us and you will be giving us. So please keep those hard questions coming. I think that it's important for us to capture all the input that's out there, and we're not afraid of the hard questions. Again, very difficult topics, some of these, but it's important for us to be able to capture the different needs out there and different concerns. We will continue then refining our Pell. We hope to have another public meeting towards the end of the year. And we're going to be relying on you to continue to providing the input. The end of the Pell is slated to be summer of 2022, so we still have a little bit, about a year to go on it. So there will be opportunities for involvement. And with that, again, wanted to thank you again for your participation. Wanted to highlight again the different ways for you to continue to provide us your input and interact with us, whether is through email, whether it's with phone call, through the website. We have that mapping tool and with that additional information. So on behalf of the department and our partners, I'd like to thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.